If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
And we're back. Hello, everyone. I'm John Wheaton, and I'm joined, as always, by S2. And today we are talking about a subject that may be flying under the radar considering how busy the news cycle is, but it's one that's important and something that we're going to dive deep into. It ties to a lot of the things that we've been talking about with communism and authoritarian regimes and how they never seem to work out. And we're talking tonight about China. China is a failing country, and a lot of people can't see it because they are the epitome of a paper tiger. They appear very dangerous and looming, but high unemployment, the one-child policy that was in place for years is now gone. Shuttered manufacturing, demographic collapses, social crises, and empty ghost cities, and the propaganda that they push on the rest of the world to try and appear like they're powerful. We're going to dive into all of it tonight and show you how they are teetering on the edge of collapse, and what we are doing on the foreign policy front with trade may actually be putting that into hyperdrive. But we'll get rolling on that in a minute. S2, how are you this evening?
I'm doing fine. Trying not to set things on fire.
Yeah. Yeah. Understood. We still got a little noise from the microphone, so just if you can remember to mute and unmute, that should help with that. So
yeah.
Anyways, but we're going to start off with a conflicted question. So S2, I'll turn it over to you to read the conflicted question, and then we will move into our main topic. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. What are the pros and cons of organizing MAGs, mutual assistant groups, before the collapse? Do you think it's a good idea? If so, how would you go about establishing that relationship with another group now? That's a weird question.
It is a weird question. It goes to more of like a long-term strategy and understanding your surroundings and communities around you. It's a deep question. It'll be interesting to see what people come up with their answers, because I think this one could have a wide variety of answers. So very cool. Don't forget, if you guys are new with us, to go over to Substack, the Survival Dispatch Substack, sign up for a free account. That gets you the Saturday Watch Guide, which gives you all of the details for everything that we put out on a weekly basis. And we have some really big things coming that I'll get to in a minute. But it does give you that full-blown rundown of what we're doing during the week, and gives you thumbnails, links, and descriptions for everything, so you can see what interests you and what doesn't, what is important, and maybe what has already passed in a constantly revolving news cycle. So that's a great way, and it's absolutely free. All you have to do is sign up for a Substack account, and you will get that. Now, tomorrow night, I want to give you guys, we have a special episode coming your way tomorrow night, and that is with the group Command 11. Command 11 is an intelligence group that supplies a lot of people that we have referenced, a lot of people that we know inside of the intel community, former CIA operatives and the like, with frontline on to the minute almost intel. And we're doing a special 2-hour episode tomorrow night featuring the Command 11 group. Some of the people that are going to be on the panel will be Mike Glover. Khalid Muhammad is the guy from Command 11. Mike Sterling, Jeff MD, Randy Nance, and myself will all be on that, as well as Chris. And we're going to be doing some sort of revolving panel so you guys can hear fully from everybody that's going to be a part of it. Myself and Chris will be co-hosting that special 2-hour episode. We typically try and limit the episodes during the week to an hour, but this is such a big thing, and there is a lot of things going on, and it's a very, very important episode, I think, for everybody to tune into, because it's going to give you guys a real picture of what the threats that we may face sooner than later in this country. There's a lot going on, so don't miss out on that. Put it on your calendar. Invite friends that may have not watched any of our stuff before, but are interested in this kind of stuff, because it is important. So tomorrow, normal time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll be bringing you a lot of on-the-nose, on-topic intel information.
I never get to be on the ones that are fun anymore.
Oh, you're saying that ours aren't fun?
Didn't say that.
I'm just kidding. Anyways, so let's get to our main topic. That's what we wanted to give you guys for really threat environment, because that's a really big key, and you're going to get a lot of information on that. And I'll just kind of tell you guys, this is probably going to be a series of Intel Report episodes that we're going to be airing over the next few upcoming weeks, because it's a very important topic. But let's move on to our main topic for tonight, and that is China's failing country when considering their high unemployment among young adults, the preponderance for shuttering manufacturing plants, especially with the tariff wars that happened earlier this year, demographic collapse and social crisis due to that long-standing one-child policy, empty ghost cities, which S2 has a lot of information on this stuff, and so we're going to lean on him for a lot of that information on how they have literally faked infrastructure for decades. Food insecurity, they can't produce enough for their people, and the land is very poor at growing purposes, estimating only 12% arable. So, and a weak military equipment hidden by propaganda and propped up really by the West. As we said back in our communism history series, China has been propped up heavily by the West. Started in the late 1970s, and we have fed so much money into building up their manufacturing base without really any kind of forcing them to move to an actual real democracy, and they have remained a communist state under the authoritarian regime of Xi Jinping. So this is a very important episode. S2, before we get started with our first couple of videos and news stories, what do you generally hope that we can present to the people tonight?
Basically, the idea that China thinks they're in the driver's seat of global expansion right now, and that they really aren't. And it's what we've been saying, a lot of us have been saying all along, is that China is not our most imminent threat currently. There's always been the mad doctrine, mutually assured destruction, that was put in place between us and Russia a long time ago, and that doctrine has been followed for quite a long time, where everybody's worried about China setting off an EMP and things like that, and them coming over here and taking our farmlands and things like that, is proof positive that they cannot support. They don't have the infrastructure to support their own people. They can't even feed their own people. Correct.
Yep. So there was and I don't know this guy's name, but there was a guest on the Joe Rogan podcast. Let's talk, but let me first start here. So I used a little bit of AI research on this and got some numbers some of these are as of 2023, but mass unemployment and economic decay. So youth unemployment is at record highs, so high, in fact, that in 2023, CCP simply stopped publishing numbers. Independent analysis estimates that it's well above 20%, with some regions up to 50%. And just so you guys are aware, The Great Depression unemployment rate was just north of like 25%. Some areas was worse, but across the country, it was about 25 to 27%. So when you're getting at a 20% unemployment, that is depression level unemployment. And when you're talking about youth, that is a very dangerous demographic to not have employed. The real economy, especially manufacturing and real estate, is imploding. China's once mighty factory sector has 50% idle capacity, and tens of thousands of plants have closed. As Western firms flee for cheaper, more stable labor markets in Mexico, Vietnam, and India. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to play this video because this actually speaks to what I'm talking about. And he said some very, very important things in this. This is titled, "Have you heard China has less than 10 years left?" This is, again, on the Joe Rogan podcast recently. So let's watch this.
You're saying that China has 10 years to go.
At most.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we now know that they've lied about their population statistics, and they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, all of whom would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted. So this is one of those places where they've got more people in their 60s and their 50s and their 40s and their 30s and their 20s.
Now, what was the logic behind the one child? Was it that they were overpopulating?
Okay, in case you didn't understand what he was saying, is each demographic, so they have more 50-year-olds than 40-year-olds, than 30-year-olds, than 20-year-olds. So it's when we talk about economic stuff, the whole idea behind, say, Social Security was that we would have this broad base of young workers to take care of the narrowing base of aging workers. And so because of that, you need a broad base in the younger demographics to help stabilize and hold up that older demographic as it ages out of the workforce and goes into retirement. S2, anything wrong with what I said there?
No, spoiler alert, this has happened before.
Yes. So let's continue this video. I just want to give you guys a little bit of clarification on that when he said that very quickly, so you guys understood what he was talking about. It's basically a reverse. It's like a funnel instead of a pyramid.
I was concerned that as the country was modernizing, the birth rate wasn't dropping fast enough, and that the young generation was literally going to eat the country alive. So they went through a breakneck urbanization program, which destroyed the birth rate. At the same time, they penalized anyone who wanted to have kids. And both of those at the same time have generated the demographic collapse we're in now.
And the problem with that also was that they wanted male children.
Yeah, there's a cultural aspect to that too. And obviously men can't have kids on their own.
And what is the ratio to men to women in the younger people in China now?
Before the data revision with the last set of lies, it was about 1 to 1.2. It was the most distorted in the world, even more than Sri Lanka, where there had been a civil war for 30 years. Since then, we don't have good sex by sex data, but it's undoubtedly worse.
And so what are the other problems that they're encountering that leads you to believe that they only have 10 years left?
Well, without young people, we've seen their labor costs increase by a factor of 14 since the year 2000. So Mexican labor is now 1/3 the cost of Chinese labor.
Listen to that. Mexican labor now is 1/3 the cost of Chinese. We always talk about cheap Chinese labor. And I can also tell you this, Mexico, because they are in close proximity to us, has much better manufacturing capabilities and technology than China does. China is very, very behind on that world, but I wanted to give you guys a quick little blurb on that.
Their educational system focuses on memorization over skills. So despite $1 trillion of investment in a bottomless supply of intellectual property theft, they really haven't advanced technologically in the last 15 years. Mexican labor is probably about twice as skilled as Chinese labor now, even though it's 1/3 the cost. They've consolidated into an ethnic-based, paranoid, nationalistic cult of personality, and it's very difficult for the Xi administration to even run it because it's not an administration anymore. No one wants to bring Xi information on anything. So we now have tech barricades that prevent the Chinese from buying the equipment, the tools, or the software that's necessary to make semiconductors. In fact, he went so far as to say any Americans working in the sector have to either quit or give up their American citizenship. Every single one of them either quit or was transferred abroad within 24 hours. So the tech system is stalled. They don't have the young people to go consumption-led. They're completely dependent on the U.S. Navy to access international trade. They are the most vulnerable country in the world right now. And based on how things go with Russia, we're looking at a significant amount of raw materials falling off the map, specifically food and energy. And the Chinese are the world's largest importer of both of those things. So there's no version of this where China comes through looking good. And the challenge for the rest of us is to figure out how do we, in as smooth and quick as a process as possible, figure out how we can get along without them, because they are going away. And they're going away this decade for certain.
Okay. That kind of sets the table for what we're talking about. And I already talked about the mass unemployment issues. He touches on really every one of the big points that that I have in this one video. It's very interesting, and it really does go to show that we have propped up. He said at one point that they rely on the United States Navy for trade security on their boats. S2, what are your thoughts on just that overall picture that's being painted?
Well, a lot of us have been talking about this stuff for the last decade. And I just go back to, this has happened before. If we take a look at what happened with China's steel industry, they brought all of the people in from the countryside and tried to get them to live in the cities and employed them at the steel mills. They turned out crap product. They couldn't sell their crap product, and their economy went in the freaking tank. So this is just another example of how history sometimes does repeat itself, but it certainly does rhyme quite a bit. It's not exactly the same this time, because China's economy relies heavily on investment and real estate. And where we talk about these ghost cities, it appears as though by creating these ghost cities, they were trying to do the same thing that they had done before when China collapsed in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because the communist planners were planning on all of the people coming in from the countryside and living in the cities, and that's not happening. Exactly the opposite is happening right now, which is what happened in the past.
Yeah. So, and one of the other things that building these ghost cities also did was it kept employment up, because you could employ a lot of people if you were building a whole city. Once those cities were built, you literally can find pictures of these ghost cities. In fact, I'll pull a couple of them up so you guys can see. They're fully built out cities where nobody lives. It's kind of eerie to look at. So
they don't have any businesses there either. Which, if you're
correct.
going to have a city, you have to have commerce to support that city. And where we have the CCP that basically is in control of every business in China, if they don't like you, they can turn your business off at will. Well, it looks like the CCP is getting turned off now. Because if you don't have people in the cities, you don't have anybody to control. So then what is your purpose for being at that point?
So Lori has a very interesting question. If the Chinese are the most vulnerable in the world now, how do you explain the thousands of acres of land and homes bought up by them in the U.S.?
Speculation.
Well, I mean, the reality is we do give them a lot of money in trade, and that money can get circulated back into other things, including our economy and our lives.
But it's not the CCP that's buying up the land. It's the large business investors that are in China that are speculating on the land. They're basically banking on the fact that they can come over here and buy the farmland over here, grow food here, and then import it back over into China. Well, guess what? With the tariffs that Trump put in place, they're going to have to pay a tariff on their own food that they grow here to import back to China because it's a product of the United States. It's not a product of China.
Right.
So they pretty much have pissed in their own shoes.
Yeah. So that's a very, very interesting thought. And so let's talk about the demographic collapse that he mentioned. So thanks to the CCP's disastrous one-child policy, this lasted from basically 1979. So the really that was the moment that China started coming out of being this isolationist communist country to trying to involve itself in the world stage. That was when Deng Xiaoping took over for Mao Zedong, was 1979. And he was instrumental in trying to get them on the world stage as far as trade goes. But they implemented a one-child policy, and that was the brainchild of Mao Zedong. He had talked about it for years, and it was brought forth in 1979. There are 35 million more men than women, meaning that tens of millions of young men will never find wives. It's a recipe for social instability. When men, and I can say this truly, when men do not have a purpose, and one of the biggest purposes in a man's life is raising a family, having a next generation, pouring into that and building a legacy that way. That inspires men to leave their reckless behavior and become more civilized. Females are notorious for being able to civilize men who would otherwise be violent and unruly. So what happens when you have social instability is you have violence, you have regime risk, you have all of these other things. They have to put these young testosterone-filled boys into something. And as we saw with the first point that I made, those guys aren't working. So that leads to even more social and economic instability. The aging population is growing while the workforce is shrinking. That's that reverse kind of funnel look instead of a pyramid where you have a small amount of retired folks up top that are being held up by a much larger, broader, younger working base. And you have to have that. Otherwise, you cannot have any kind of social services at all. So
I call it the toilet bowl model.
Yeah, that's true. And it's very, very... and yes, they will go into the military errand for sure. The problem is they're also propping up their military. Their military is not as strong as everybody wants to think it is. Chinese are really good at propaganda and saber rattling. And the reality is one small tariff war that Donald Trump put on them back in February, March, almost brought that country to its knees in a matter of weeks with the high tariffs that we put on it. Like there were reports from inside China of them shuttering even more factories, just boom, 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 because they had nothing to make because it was going to cost them too much. And now that they're being outpaced in labor markets like Mexico, Vietnam, and India, as India becomes an emerging market for inexpensive labor. So there are a lot of things to consider there.
And the workers have actually started to revolt over there 5 years ago too. Well, maybe it wasn't 5 years ago. I think it was about 3 years ago. If you recall, they had an incident at one of the Apple plants where people were literally jumping over the fence to escape working at the Apple plants, building iPhones and whatnot.
Yeah, Aaron is making some very good points in the chat. Yes, absolutely. We saved China from the Japanese in World War II, but even more recently, they don't have a tested military. They have not really been involved in a conflict in a very long time, other than their own ethnic cleansing and cultural revolutions that killed millions of people, mainly through famine, but others were shot in the back of the head. So, and one thing I will say about the buying of land of China, I don't know if you guys missed this in the news, but literally like a week and a half ago, Trump has basically, I think he put an executive order out there or maybe it was something that was passed through Congress. I don't remember exactly. I'd have to look it up. But basically, is they're going to be getting this land back from anybody that is connected to the state in China. So that is being
look at what the AG Bailey did in Missouri. He sued them over COVID, and they didn't show up to court, and they won by default. So they're going to get all of their land back.
Yep. So there are things in the works that are taking a lot of this back. If only we could do that with Bill Gates. Sorry, had to say that for a second. Anyways, then we have to talk about food insecurity. But before we do that, I want to do this from Rod D. Martin, and we will look at this. This is a thread on Twitter. China's economy is in a death spiral. The famed investor Kyle Bass says they're not coming back. Real estate collapse, banking crisis, 17% youth unemployment, $500 billion in capital flight. That's capital moving out of China. So I can actually use an example of the industry that I work in, is the automotive industry. Heavily connected due to semiconductors and cheap electrical components come from China. The instant the tariffs go up, it is calculated instantly, and we almost instantaneously find a supplier in a different country than China for our little components that go on our printed circuit boards that we make here at the plant that I work at. So there's a lot of things, and companies can figure out really, really quickly and move really, really quickly to something else. And we'll find Thailand-based companies, we'll find Vietnam-based companies, and get our components from them. And once we switching back becomes, you have to actually have a vast cost reduction in order for us to want to switch back to a Chinese supplier. So this is the capital that they're talking about moving out. $500 billion in capital flight to other countries, and now deflation. So in this thread, part 2, there is nothing that will bail out China, says Bass. Trade surplus down 35%. That's thanks to the tariffs, actually. In not totally, but in some part it is. Real estate imploding since Evergrande collapse. Youth, 1 in 6 can't find work. Consumers pulling back hard. Local governments buried in debt. China's 10-year bond yield is now 1.64%, a red flag. The U.S. 10-year Treasury bond is 4.26. That's a huge gap. The bond market tells the truth, and it screams that China is in crisis. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping, data, censored, faked, and fantasy. China's exports exports to the U.S. have dropped 35% in May. Trump's tariffs are working, and the trade surplus is shrinking. Their leverage is dying, and now they're panicking. But here's the real danger. Weak, collapsed China is more likely to go to war to distract its people. Bass Xi is still wants to take Taiwan and break the first island chain. His goal, project power to San Francisco. 6, but America has the Trump card, literally. The U.S. controls the global dollar system, and the second China moves on Taiwan, we would cut them off from the dollar. That'll stop them cold. Maybe nobody wants to trade in yen. Or that's not yen. It's
yuan.
Yuan. Sorry, yen is the Japanese one. Bombs and banks. Bass says use both. Deterrence doesn't mean sending troops into harm's way. It means making Beijing know no Taiwan invasion, or you will lose access to the global economy. Trump's Iran strikes, they got China's attention. Remember when that happened? I believe me and S2 both said that this is also a signal to other countries. Hey, we can mess your world up real quick, and our pilots will go. You won't see them. They'll drop bombs. Your stuff will be gone, and they'll be back at home 20 hours later, sleeping in their beds with their families. We can do a lot of crazy things with the technology that we have. 8, giving up Taiwan, giving up America's future. Taiwan is the linchpin in the Pacific, in the Western Pacific. Let China take it and their own shipping lanes and the chip factories, the high ground, and now, and not just about Taiwan, it's about everything. Bottom line, China is broke, belligerent, and backed into a corner. Trump's tariffs are working, and the dollar is our ultimate weapon. We can stop war without sending troops, and we use economic warfare first. That's as far as I'm going to go into that thread. What are your thoughts on that, S2? I think you're muted, bud. Are you there, S2? Okay. Seems like he's having some technical difficulties. So when he comes back, we'll let him sound off on. Oh, there he is. Okay. So what are your thoughts on all of that in that thread?
I think it's 100% true. Like you said, we both said that with what happened over in Iran is everybody was going to try to fuck around and find out, and China is not in a position to do that right now. They really aren't. They're going to have to be extremely careful about anything that they do, including going after Taiwan. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of Taiwan's manufacturing of chips is actually moving here. They've already got a plant started in Arizona that they've already shipped a lot of their stuff over here. So strategically, from a chip standpoint, I don't think we're in much danger along that road.
Yeah.
But what I see, as was mentioned in that post, what happens invariably when you go to war is all of a sudden your industrialized sectors start ramping up, and then all of a sudden there's employment again. But however, that's not really a good plan, because you also have to have people to fight in that war. So you're basically burning your candle at both ends at that point.
Yeah, it has to be a short-lived type of thing, because, well, the big issue with doing that is, well, we can use World War II as an example. We were coming out of the Great Depression, but we did have high quality and actually some of the best quality in the world as far as being able to mass produce good quality products for our troops. And that was one of the downsides to Nazi Germany at the time, was that they had technology and they had engineering expertise that could give really high quality things. They did not have the manufacturing or the raw materials that the United States has always been privileged to have. We have massive levels of natural resources. The problem is we have outsourced a lot of this in the name of cheap labor, and we've gotten cheap crap back. I mean, the joke continues to go, cheap Chinese crap. Now, I will say, over time, thanks to intellectual property theft, the Chinese have gotten good at certain sectors of manufacturing. They make pretty good technological things. Their drone technology is very good. But that is because they have stolen other people's ideas. As that guy said in that video earlier, they are a memorization and not a forward thinking, not a critical thinking type education system. It's all memorization. So that's very good if you're stealing other people's intellectual property and applying it to your own and making it cheaper. Yeah, you can do that and get by with it. The problem is if you don't have forward thinking, you're eventually going to run into a wall. And that's really where China is headed right now, is that they don't have a technologically advanced thought process in their engineering. They're just stealing everybody else's ideas. So we'll play this other video here. This is the growth engine of China is sputtering, and this is about a minute long video. We'll watch this real quick.
I think that we're probably going to broker some type of European They announced today that they're open. Other countries are announcing that they're open. I think the primary focus here has to be China. We have very serious trade deficits with China. And at the end of the day, I think economically speaking, we're going to come out on the top. Very, very serious constraints with the Chinese economy. Currently, the World Bank had a great analysis that came out, I think, days or a week ago, talking about the fact that they have an aging working population. Their debt-fueled growth strategy has some very serious structural constraints that absolutely benefits the United States if we're going to hike up tariffs against China. At some point, Laura, they're going to have to come to the table a lot quicker than we are. And so if the president's going to focus his ire on any of these countries, it absolutely must be China. I think there is an argument to make, though, that we need to see some type of reshoring with manufacturing coming back to the United States. Will it go back to the great halcyon days of the 80s or 90s? Probably not.
But what about the idea that about robots versus jobs for people? I mean, how do you reconcile the point?
You are going to have some automation as a result of technology. There's not a whole lot we can do about that. But what you can begin to do, Laura, is prepare the working population to work those jobs. We're not at a point where machines can fix themselves. You're going to need skilled people to address some of those problems. That's what we should begin to focus on.
And that last little bit is very, very important. What the difference between a Chinese workforce and an American workforce, and I already see it in my job. We have extremely automated processes in my plant, and we live in a rural area and employ about 800 people. That's up. When I first started working there 13 years ago, we had just under 300. So actually, as we have increased automation, we've actually had to increase employees. But what we're seeing is we actually need more skilled employees rather than unskilled employees. So that opens up a world where you're going to have a more skilled labor force as you implement robotics and automation into your processes. Fixing those and designing those and setting those up is actually a higher skill than just take this part and put it in this pallet to move down to the next process. So our labor force is more conducive to that with our ability to teach and train people on higher skilled jobs. So it's not necessarily, labor forces have changed throughout history. When you go back to pre-Civil War, the reason that slavery was such a big deal at that point was because we didn't have automated system for harvesting crops. I'm not saying I agree with slavery, but that was part of the reason. And with the invention of the steam engines, the other automatic harvesting machines, that demand for actual manual labor, whether it was paid or a slave labor, is going to diminish. What we're seeing with China is they haven't really gotten into that heavily automated area. In some areas they have, but overall China is still very antiquated in their processes. It's a very man-reliant manufacturing process, and that's a very much a problem with why they're hitting this wall. S2? Nope. Hold up. I think you're muted, bud, if you're talking. Yes, I agree, Aaron James. That's absolutely true. We did have a highly skilled workforce, and we turned a lot of our, innovations of the assembly line processes for building vehicles. We turned car manufacturers into tank manufacturers, and Ford Motor Company made B-17s and other planes. So it was, and they could turn them out in the speed of like a plane would roll off the assembly line every 60 minutes or 45 minutes. So we got to a point where we could produce more than the enemy forces could shoot down. We were producing them faster than they could shoot down. So this is where technology comes into play. We have really always been, now I say this with a grain of salt because I still think that our government has sold us out, because instead of investing in technological advances that would breed this higher higher skill level workforce, we just outsourced it in the name of savings. And in the long run, it doesn't save you money because you get cheaper stuff. I mean, goodness gracious, I have like a 1970s or 80s model refrigerator in my garage, and it goes through the insane blazing heat of the summer and the extreme colds of the winter, and it's still working. And my newer refrigerators in my kitchen, I'm actually going to have to replace next week because it's gone on the fritz and I just lost like $30 worth of meat. So there is something to be said for those older, higher quality built things that were built in the United States and built with better practices and better controls in that. Because when it comes to manufacturing, it's important. I believe I just lost S2. I don't know. Hopefully he'll be back, but we'll continue on. So I did talk about military weakness. Let's talk about the details in that. China's military is untested, unproven, and riddled with corruption. The naval vessels and aircraft fail in real world exercises, because we do have military exercises with China from time to time. Missiles will miss their targets, and many systems were reverse engineered knockoffs of older Western and Russian platforms. Morale is low, combat readiness is poor, and their command structure is overly politicized, favoring loyal to the party over competence. And this is a broken system. And honestly, it's kind of similar to the system that a lot of the leftist ideologies and communists were trying to build in the United States, where it's more interested in political things like gender ideology and the rainbow jihad than it is actually breaking stuff and winning wars and killing people, because that is what the military is designed to do. Spoiler alert, it's not a kumbaya session that we sit around in a fire and roast marshmallows. It is a get in, and in the words of General Patton, we don't win wars by dying for our country. We win wars by making the other poor, dumb bastards, die for theirs. And that's the reality and the purpose of a finely tuned, trained, and lethal military. And it seems like that is turning around, and that's a very good thing. Collapsing global trust and deglobalization. Now, this is a broader picture of things that we're looking at. Western companies are rapidly decoupling from China due to IP theft, rising costs, and the fear of Taiwan war fallout. So there is a lot of this going on, a metric ton of this. So what we're seeing is, because of supply chain issues, and this could have, one of the biggest things that started all of this was back in 2020. We did a lot of changing over from Chinese supply in 2020. At my plant personally, and we're small in comparison to a lot of that, but we do supply some of the bigger names. We're talking about Toyota, Honda, Chevy, all of those we supply parts to. So we saw a massive switchover. When the tariffs kicked in earlier this year, another wave of switchover. So a lot of companies are moving away from China because they understand that China is not playing fair. And they inflate their own currency. They destroy their word with people because they're in there just to steal your ideas. And so once the world's factory, China now faces a growing manufacturing exodus, with Mexico, India, Vietnam, and Indonesia becoming the new go-to partners and for global brands. I can tell you this, Toyota has built massive levels of factories over just across the border in Mexico. And actually, they're starting to pull some of those over back into the United States too. So the whole idea of bringing things over from China is dwindling big time. And with India emerging as an emerging economy and starting to catch up with the world, that's another one. But Mexico is a third the cost labor-wise, and it's a more consistent and quality labor force in Mexico than it is in the United States. Or I mean, in China. Sorry, not the United States. But Vietnam just signed a deal with the Trump administration. to bring more, to set levels of tariffs and to get more manufacturing into Vietnam. Indonesia is about to do the same thing. So this is all pointing to a drastic collapse inside of the China global markets. The jig is up. People are done with it, whether maliciously or non-maliciously. The unspecified virus of unknown origins that came upon the world in 2020 was a direct result of China messing around at the behest of some nefarious characters in the United States, but playing God and not having safe practices in their level 4 virus facilities. And whether purposeful or not purposeful, that release of the virus was devastating to the world and may have set a lot of this into motion. So lastly, political fragility is the last point. Xi Jinping is surrounded himself with loyalists instead of problem solvers, creating yes men echo chambers at the top. The regime is deeply paranoid, ramping up on surveillance, censorship, and arrests of entrepreneurs, pastors, and the finance executives. With no political reform, no economic freedom, the collapsed population base, China is headed for a long and stagnant or hard crash. So I'm looking at this, and I have some more videos to share with you guys, and then we'll talk about really what this means. But it's something to keep an eye on. And I do have an idea at the end that I want to posit to you guys on why I think that maybe President Trump knew a lot of this, and there may be more to tariffs than what we're all seeing. So let's watch this video. It's about 2 minutes long, and this is Strategic Wealth Partners. This is a clip from Fox News.
What is the leading indicator that would suggest there's a real problem in China?
Factory activity is now at a 2-year low. That is a real indicator. Shipments from China to California are already down 10%. That is a real-time indicator. China was already in a recession before these tariffs were even mentioned. So they've been struggling for years and years and years. They were building ghost towns years ago that nobody lives in just to falsely inflate their economic numbers. You look at what's happening now, they're a population where actually in decline. I mean, they're not producing enough babies to maintain population growth, which we all know. Right. If you want to grow your economy, you need to grow your population, and your population needs to become more productive. So China is stuck between a rock and a hard place. I agree that politically, they don't want to appear weak. They probably really want a deal right now, but they don't want to come off as weak. Now, the big difference between China and us is that we operate quarter to quarter. That makes it difficult. We have to show results every single quarter or our economic data reflects it. China operates on a 100-year plan. That gives them some more time.
On that note, Mark, really quickly, right back to you. The latest quarter of economic research right here at home suggests a 0.3% contraction, I believe. And there are indicators, of course, there's the up and down roller coaster of the United States stock market, that this is also hurting here at home. So the question is, who blinks first, the U.S. or China?
Well, I mean, it seems like President Trump and the team they've at least offered to roll back some of the 145% tariffs on China. China said there was never any discussion, so I don't know what has actually happened. But look, Will, to that negative 0.3 number, the reason that was so low is because negative 4.8 of that, so I mean, we would have had substantial economic growth, came from the fact that we imported so much in the first quarter, more than we exported. Why did we import so much? Because we were front running the tariffs. That's why.
Right.
Okay. And then this is Ariz Abdullah, and he says, China's economic miracle is about to go spectacularly bust. Decades of unsustainable growth, fuel, and colossal debt bubble, and a teetering property market is catching up. This isn't a challenge. It's an inevitable reckoning for the CCP's house of cards. Let's watch this video as well, and then we'll do some final analysis before we let you guys go.
Second largest economy through the greatest 40-year run in economic history. China's GDP grew by more than 9% per year from 1980 to 2019. And during that time, more than 800 million people were lifted out of extreme poverty. But the good times may be coming to an end. The capital that funded China's growth is drying up. The energy that powered its manufacturing is getting more expensive. And the unfettered growth of its real estate market has hit a brick wall. China's economy faces the most ominous challenges since the Great Leap Forward that resulted in 3 years of famine and tens of millions of deaths. But China's geopolitical rivals should not be celebrated. It is the top trading partner for more than 120 of the world's 195 countries, which means trouble in the Middle Kingdom can and will affect everyone. In this video, we'll be unpacking the enormous debt bubble that Chinese leadership is attempting to unwind, the challenging global energy market conditions making things worse, and the most likely policy choice that the CCP must make in order to stay solvent. But if the Chinese economy is a Ponzi scheme poised to pop, then we need to first understand the 4-decade hot streak that preceded the present day. China's remarkable economic growth story begins in the 1970s, when Deng Xiaoping initiated a series of economic reforms known as reform and opening up. This marked a significant shift from the centrally planned economy that defined China's history under communism. But he knew that he couldn't completely turn a communist country into a capitalist one and still maintain control. So he limited the open market forces to 4 special economic zones. In these fenced-off areas, trade was conducted in a more market-oriented system.
Yeah, so that's just a portion of this whole thing. I would advise you guys to go and check out.
China has ascended to the world's second.
This video. This is a portion of a YouTube video. Very good, and I think it's linked down here. So, extremely good. So one of the things that was the key here was that China didn't ever actually, they wanted all of the benefits of a truly capitalist and free trade market, but they couldn't let go of communism. They couldn't let go of government control. So they tried to split the baby, for lack of a better term. They tried to hold on to control by holding all of the manufacturing within certain provinces. Within those provinces, it operated very much like a Western style economy would. That's why a lot of people, when they go and visit China, they go visit these kind of more westernized areas. And so they're like, oh yeah, China's great. No, like get outside of these provinces, get outside of these cities, go to where the people are really under the boot of the government. And they also tried to push people into populated centralized population areas by building these ghost cities, and nobody wanted to. Nobody wanted to go under that level of control. And so now that they're losing their grip on power, because you cannot run, it's like trying to run your vehicle on E85 gasoline when it's not a flexible fuel vehicle. It might run, but it's going to run really crappy, and you might grow because you are manipulating global trade. And notice that time frame was from when Deng Xiaoping came into power and until the present day, until really 2020. And then we have seen a start to decline from there. Steady growth. And that was while we were outsourcing all of this stuff to China. And there were various players on the global stage that opened this up, Bill Clinton being one of them, with the most favored nation status. And then in 2001, they were allowed into the global trade organizations. And then it was like putting jet fuel on that. And like something like 35 or 40 million jobs left the United States and ended up in China. So that was really where that economic growth and that 9% GDP growth, which is unheard of, happened. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that they have lied about their economic growth numbers. They have lied about their economy. They have manipulated currency in order to get positive trade initiatives in their favor. And that's why we have such a trade deficit with them. This is the thing that Donald Trump was talking about, that all of the quote unquote economic experts were talking about. The other point in that video that I want to point out, and this is really where my thinking might be on where Trump came in and really shocked a lot of people with the level of aggression that he took towards China in early this year. I think it was like March timeframe that we went into this economic and tariff war. And the reason was, I think Trump actually saw this house of cards going to collapse. And understanding that, you have to be ahead of the game. So how do we force ourselves off of the constant drug IV of Chinese cheap goods? Well, if you inflate what they have to pay to import things, then it's going to force people to start looking elsewhere and buy things that are made in other countries or in the United States. That slowly weans us off of the Chinese teat, for lack of a better term. And once we are off of that, if the collapse was to happen, we will feel it a lot less than other countries that are still heavily reliant on China. This is a kind of collapse that could take down a lot of the global markets. And if we are prepared for that, then we might have a chance of riding out the storm. But make no mistake, the storm is coming. All of the markers are there, and all of the setup is in place for this collapse. So, the other one is that India rises, China stumbles, 2025 signals a new global economic powerhouse in the making. And this is talking about India. India is becoming a massive competitor to China in the low expense goods. And if you remember, earlier this year, Trump actually made a trip to India to talk to them about global trade. And they are growing massively and not a communist nation. So it is very, very interesting to see all of this as China begins to shrink, and shrink rather rapidly into that world. So that there is somebody there to pick up and take up the slack. Now, myself, I prefer that we bring as much of the manufacturing back to the United States as we can. Everything that is feasible, or we use countries that are attached to us geographically, like Mexico, for those goods that don't make sense for us to manufacture. Because I'll just be real with you guys. There are some things that it does not make sense to manufacture in the United States, because the manufacturing process is expensive and it's easier to make because it's very basic manufacturing. It's not high skill manufacturing. I'm talking about things like metal works and steel manufacturing and all that stuff. Now, should we keep some of that in the United States? Absolutely. But I'm not going to say that everything needs to be made in the United States, because it doesn't always make sense economically to do those things. And so that is one of the things that we have to take into consideration. But anything that is vital to our national security should be made in the United States. Hands down, full stop. All of that should be. And it's very, very important. Very, very important. So, and lastly, got one last slide here. Gauging the strength of China's economy in uncertain times amid increasing pressure from Chinese economy, from Chinese trade conflict with the U.S., assessing the strength of the economy in China will be an important watch point. In this post, we provide the update on China's recent economic performance and policy changes. There's a lot of things, and this talks about 2020. It talks about major developer, the Evergrande, and all of the things that are causing these things to spiral. And I don't think this is over. I think we're going to see a lot of this ramping up in the very near future. And it's important that we stay aware of this. So what do we need to do? Well, first of all, we need to make sure that we are prepared for things that might happen when we are faced with this. Remember, I mean, like I've had iPhones for most of my life, and I just saw Lori. She put in there, yes, China manufactures most iPhones. Now, I will say, in Trump's first term, Apple started building manufacturing plants for electronics in the United States when the corporate level taxes went down. Now, with the increase in the big beautiful bill that just passed, making those permanent tax cuts, we will likely see more of that over the upcoming years. And with Trump, who is, I mean, I don't typically like to overly praise politicians, but I do think that Trump is ahead of the game on this because he is approaching this from a business standpoint. He is not approaching it from a political enrichment scheme like a lot of politicians are. He is approaching it from what is best for our country. And I truly believe that Donald Trump loves this country. He didn't have to run for president. The dude was already a billionaire. In fact, he's lost a lot of money doing a lot of this stuff. He didn't have to run for re-election. But I do believe that he realized that there was a major issue and it was a turning point for the country. And I truly believe that he does love America and he wants us to do best. Okay. So Aaron James, Apple moved to India. I was actually not aware of this. I'll have to look into that. I hadn't done much research on Apple, but and then back to the U.S. So this is interesting, and I think that those factories that were started to be built in 2017, I think was when Apple announced that, several $1 billion worth of infrastructure being invested in moving all of that stuff back to the United States, which is good. That is an important thing for us to have because this kind of technology, it's not going away, guys. As much as we spend on these things, and I don't necessarily think that they're the best thing for us, but they are here to stay, and they're only going to get more and more and more. So, this is a big turning point for us as a country, and I do think that the reason Trump moved with such precision and speed early in his second term was because he saw this happening and he wanted to get way ahead of it because it doesn't happen overnight. When a global economy, when a global supplier of goods, a country collapses, the ripple effects engulf the globe. And you have to be prepared for it. And it would take years if the collapse happened where we were predominantly dependent on China, and it's important that we do this. And I think that President Trump is the best suited for this kind of a thing. So it's hopeful, and I think that it's something that we should be concerned about. But also the potential for us to become completely and totally self-sufficient as a country and to lead the world as we have not really been able to do since probably the late 1980s. That is on the horizon. So that's a positive thing, I think. But we do need to be prepared because hard times could come out of this. If there is some sort of a collapse where before we had everything in place, we could feel some hardships. We could feel some squeezing in our day-to-day lives. So this is really right up our alley at Survival Dispatch, where we talk about why it's important to be prepared for every type of situation. So stock up. Stock up while we can. This is even a biblical thing. When you talk about the story of Joseph, which is probably one of the best examples in the Bible of preparing for a SHTF type moment. And it was 7 years of plenty, and they stored up everything, and they bought everything, and they got everything ready, and ended up saving the world in the second 7 years of famine. We need to have the same mindset. While things are good, while we're in a good place where we can actually get things that we may need, do it. take those extra few dollars, and instead of going and get yourself a Starbucks, go and get yourself some food, some shelf-stable food, some water, ammunition, any kind of things that you might have to deal with civil unrest or the squeezing of resources that you rely on to live day to day. This is all important stuff, guys, and it's why we do what we do. The reality is China's economic collapse, it's not just academic, it's direct implications for our family's security and prosperity. First action is protect your finances in reviewing retirement accounts and investments for hidden China exposure. Make sure that you don't have your 401ks attached to things that are directly attached to the Chinese markets. Many mutual funds and EFTs are heavily weighted in Chinese companies because they yield high returns because they manipulate currency. Second action item would be to build a deeper local community connections and resilient networks. History shows that when major powers experience rapid decline, global turbulence follows, as I spoke of earlier. And your strength is your local community. So get to know your neighbors, guys. Get to know your local communities. At your church, get to know all of the people you go to church with. If you go to a larger church, start introducing yourself to people. Find people with the same ideology and worldview, and befriend those people and build relationships, because those may be the very relationships you need when things get bad. Build a community. That's the number one indicator of survival in a bad situation, is having a community. Don't just absorb this information, guys. We've got to act on it. Train like your life depends on it, because in the coming decade, it could reshape the global order in ways that we haven't seen since the Second World War. And that was the last major shift globally. So this is all important stuff that we need to sit down and at minimum take stock in what you have and what you need, and start building those communities. A special shout out to Roger Moore, who submitted yesterday's big news. It's Gnome's announcement to arrest the second suspect connected to the CBP agent shooting, and we saw this in the news a couple of weeks ago, or about a week ago. So I'll show you guys this, and then we'll close it out.
DHS is about to give an update right here in Manhattan. She's going to be at One World Trade along with these other officials here. There's Tom Homan seen on the right-hand side. An agent right here in New York City, major security incident shot over the weekend. Whole lot of eyeballs on this to follow what is coming next here in New York City and across the country.
Sorry, Jillian. The agent hit in the face and the forearm, transported to a hospital, currently in stable condition. This is Christy Gnome. Let's go ahead and drop in as it begins. Good morning, everyone.
I'm Christy Gnome. I'm the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. And we just recently, in the last couple of days, have had one of our own that has been attacked and has been harmed and dangerously by violent criminals that have been run loose here in New York City, but also in this country as a result of sanctuary city policies and the policies of the Biden administration. I just want you all to know that we have our hearts and our prayers going out with our officer and with his family and his friends, and we'll be lifting him up in prayer for his quick recovery and his healing from this terrible tragedy that has befallen him.
So as you can see, we still have so many things going on in this country, so many things that can cause unrest. So thank you, Roger, for one of our mainstays, always posting things in our Guardians chat. And that's another thing, guys, go over to our Substack, sign up for a free account. And if you find it interesting enough, you can also sign up for that Guardians membership and get access to a lot of this information that gets put out every single day. This is a big deal. And we want to hear your thoughts on China's economic situation. I know I've seen a lot in the chat. Joseph Gee, Aaron James, you guys have been in there just absolutely debating and talking about this. I appreciate that, guys. This is how we get through things, and we can have disagreements and we can talk these things through. But that's what I love about this survival dispatch community is you guys sometimes I'm like, maybe I should just shut up and just play the just play the chat or put the chat up and let you guys talk through it, because you guys are so well informed, and we couldn't do this without you guys. So it's really, really important that you guys stay connected, and we do appreciate that for sure. Share your insights on Substack or join the conversation and the Signal chat with the Guardians membership. That's a big, big deal. Let's go back to the conflicted question, and then I'll close us out and we'll get going. Okay. What are the pros and cons of a MAGS, which is a mutual assistant group? This is a group, not your group or your community, but a group that may give you some support in certain things, and there may be mutual benefit to having that. Do you think it's a good idea? So here's the question. Do you think it's a good idea? If so, how would you go about establishing that relationship with another group now? So my answer to this would be, I have a group of guys that are very like-minded. We do a lot of training together. We do a lot of talking about things. I have a group of men at my church that we talk about spiritual things, but we also talk about the world and what's going on in the world, trying to be the best informed and prepared men in society. And we all have strengths and weaknesses. My strength would probably be more on the tactical side, training and understanding and just the data analysis of the political world and landscape. And but I also get really heavily into theological type questions. I like deep subjects. But maybe you have a group of people that has medical expertise, and you bring those people in, and these are key people that you're going to need. Maybe you have farmers or ranchers, groups of people that live out in off the beaten path that you can make connections with, and in those terrible situations, you can rely on them for certain aspects of what you need, and then you can in turn give them security or some sort of communications ability or tech ability, all of those kinds of things. So it's important that we identify those, and I think that the way you establish it is you just start, as I said, whatever community you're in, whether you're at the church or at a bar or at a town meeting of prominent citizens. Start to search out those people, feel them out, see where kind of their worldview is. And I can guarantee you, if they're a similar worldview, you guys will figure that out very quickly, because those people are typically looking for people like you too. So start having conversations with people. That's how you open this up. Maybe not go full tilt into the things that we think and know, but feel that out. Some generic questions. Hey, what do you think about the economy? All of this kind of stuff. What do you think about what's going on in China? What do you think about what's going on in the Middle East? All of those kinds of things. Those are the key conversations to start building the relationships that are very, very important. And so I would like to hear what you guys have to say about that tonight. What's your thoughts on building relationships with other groups that you can support each other in ways that you're unable to do solo with your groups? And we could talk about a group. We could talk about a family group, as Aaron talked about preparing his family, or we could talk about a communal group that has another communal group, and it can be any and all of those type of situations. But I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about that in the chat. I think it's actually an important thing, and you have to do it before the crap hits the fan, because if you do it afterwards, there's a lot of mistrust. But if you built those relationships beforehand, then when the hard times come, you generally know who you can trust better than others. So that's my answer. Don't forget, guys, tomorrow, please let everybody know. Let everybody know that we have a massive show tomorrow. Tune in, because we have Chris back tomorrow. I will be joining the panel. I typically don't on a night that's not my normal hosting night, but this is important enough that I'm going to join in, and we're going to be doing a dual stream with myself and Chris hosting a panel, and that's a tier 1 panel. I tell you, Mike Glover, many of you guys know him, former Green Beret, and Fieldcraft Survival was his company, tactical training. I took several of their classes back several years ago. Dave, my partner with Righteous Savages, was an instructor for Fieldcraft Survival for a couple of years. Khalid Muhammad from Command 11, which is an intel gathering group from the Middle East, and they are real-time suppliers of information for some major names in the intelligence community, people that we have talked about and referenced, and I have met some of these people. This is like directly from the horse's mouth. These are the people that give intel to some of the more prominent people in media that we know and trust. And then Mike Sterling, Jeff MD, Randy Nance, all going to be on the panel. And we're probably going to do a rotating panel so that you guys can hear from every person on there. And it's going to be probably about a 2+ hour stream, but it's a special thing because there are real threats out there. And, it's not just China, and China has been heralded in a lot of ways as the biggest threat that we have. I don't think so. I think it's, considering what's going on in the world, I think it's still radical Islam. Radical Islam is the biggest threat that we are facing in the world because it has a long history of tyranny and terrorism. And not just in the last 10 years or 20 years, not since the 2 towers fell, or any other attack that's happened in America. This happened centuries before America ever existed, and it's a real threat. And we're going to give you guys some really important info tomorrow night, so mark your calendars, get your meals out of the way before 7 p.m. Central or 7 p.m. Eastern time, and then come and join us for a very amazing, highly informative 2-hour episode. And we might even go longer than that, but we know that that's definitely going to happen. We want to thank you all for your support of SDN, especially our subscribers and sponsors. You're the reason that we work so hard to bring truth, and we are excited every time that we get to join this community and get to connect with you guys. My name's John Wheaton from the Righteous Savages and Survival Dispatch and Survival Dispatch News. Until tomorrow, we'll see you again. Until then, be safe, be prepared, and God bless America. Have a good night.
President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup.